of Park Overlook here in Durwood. I've lived here for almost 18 years. Many of my committee members are on this call. Shobana Sharma, particularly, as well as let's see here. Who do we else? We have Carol Kosary will likely join us. She's on travel, and I'm not seeing any of other committee members, but I do want to introduce Nkosi Yearwood of Montgomery Planning. Nkosi, thank you always for helping us set up success for these muetings. Much appreciated. I'm just having some trouble here. I'm going to put the agenda for our meeting up here. So we're going to begin with that welcome. And I want to thank everyone for participating this evening, for your valuable time this evening, especially our guest speaker, David Dice, and certainly also Greg Assant, to you as well for joining. I understand technology may rear its head and you might take over, and maybe that'll happen during the Q&A. I don't know. But I also want to thank very much Aaron Kraut from Don Lütke's office, Councilmember Lütke's office, as well as Seth Adams from MCPS for joining this evening. Thank you, gentlemen, very, very much. Without any further ado, David, can I turn things over to you? We're going to hear an update from you on the much appreciated work by you and your team to relocate the MCPS bus depot to enable the realization of the Shady Grove sector plan, a major issue of concern in our community, as you well know, and equally we appreciate your time and your expertise dedicated to facing this challenge and moving us along on the plan. So I'll turn things over to you. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Jeff. And again, I'm supported by Greg Assant, my deputy director, and of course, a good friend and colleague, Seth Adams with Montgomery County Public Schools. It's been a while since we've spoken, and appreciate some of the challenges that has preceded our showing up, and we certainly want to stay in contact with you folks with updates, even when we don't have a great deal of progress to provide, which is somewhat the case tonight. We've still got a lot of irons in the fire, but nothing ready to hammer into a final result. I want to start by just clarifying. Jeff sent out a message earlier, I guess it was today. I replied all, so hopefully those of you that were on the email string, which is getting to be a long string, got my reply. But just to clarify for everyone's benefit, if you haven't checked your emails, there was a press release that went out that talked about changes. It may have been interpreted as a new depot in the Shady Grove area, Gaithersburg. It is not a new depot. We are in the process under DGS's efforts to eliminate carbon from the county until by 2035, which is a legally mandated objective. And the two principal contributors to carbon being vehicles and buildings. So DGS is leading the county's initiative to reduce the county's carbon footprint, and part of that is to eliminate our reliance upon fossil fuels when it comes to fleet vehicles, and also dirty power when it comes to coal-generated power plants. And so we have been systematically installing photovoltaic panels on county buildings and properties, and continue to do so. We've got a long way to go. Next major project will be up in the Oaks landfill, where we're going to carpet the top of the landfill with photovoltaic panels, which will generate electricity in the future that will help us generate hydrogen, so that we can provide hydrogen fuel to buses operating out of the existing Shady Grove Depot. But the press release that went out was somewhat misleading. So let me clarify what we're doing. We're taking the existing Shady Grove Depot and covering it, as you can see in the image that was sent out, with photovoltaic panels generating 5 megawatts of electricity that will both power the facility, charge electric buses, and help us to in the hydrogen generation process. The Shady Grove Depot, out of the Shady Grove Depot, will operate both electric and hydrogen fuel cell buses as we transition the transit fleet from diesel and compressed natural gas to electric and fuel cell. We just successfully completed a change to the Brookville depot in Silver Spring, so that we'll be powering ultimately the 150 buses that are stationed there, all of which will be converted to electric. We've got 14 buses, electric buses already operating there. We just last month placed an order for 100 more electric buses. So that process is already underway. The private partner that successfully completed that project is now moving to the Shady Grove Depot, and they'll begin that work this fall, hence the press release. So that's what's happening at that depot. The depot's not expanding. It's already, frankly, pretty close to capacity already, but it is an example of the county's aggressive efforts to become environmentally responsible. The other important aspect of both facilities, as well as three others that we've already converted to microgrids, is that they will be resilient, which means that should the grid fail, should there be power grid losses, either widespread or even localized, the facility can still operate so that we can still provide public transit to the community, since so many people rely upon public transportation to conduct their lives, kids to school, people to work, libraries, shopping malls, etc. So that's a good thing. And frankly, the future depots that we will construct will include the same framework, so that it's a good model. It's one we want to perpetuate. And instead of building something and then converting it, I think it's smarter to just plan for that from the start. So when we build a future depot, it will include these same features. We do now on to the current project in question. We continue to look at properties. We have a couple in mind that, again, as I've said before to this audience, can't really divulge because that would screw up our strategies and negotiations. But we do have some sites in mind and are pursuing those, but a lot of that is very timing related. Right now, the market's kind of crazy. So we want to make sure we're good stewards over the public funds. And so we're looking for opportunities. And Greg Assant could provide some details along that line if there's an interest to pursue some of that. Regarding the west side of Crabs Branch, where the existing housing is, just to update everyone for this conversation, there is a grand opening, I believe it's tomorrow, if I'm right, of the Laureate in the multifamily area of that development. It's an exciting project, and we're pleased to see that effort continuing. Some folks have asked about the vacant lot there at the corner of Crabs and Shady Grove. We're working with EYA to create a small park on that unbuilt portion on what are now Columbus and Gramercy. So that effort is going to get underway. And there's been a lot of conversation about the effort that, as you all know, who have been with us through this ever lengthening journey, we have advocated for some time that to distribute the buses that are at the existing depot now on the east side of Crabs Branch, um, that we've advocated parking buses at schools. Many years ago, we had a consultant do a cursory review that, in our mind, established the viability of that plan. Schools wanted to look at this on its own and took on a student work group to evaluate the concept of bus parking, not only in the Shady Grove depot area, but also at all schools. If it's a good idea at Shady Grove, it's a good idea everywhere because schools is already experiencing overcrowding at its existing depots. That study is still in review inside MCPS. We've put in a couple of requests to get the results of that, but those are not yet forthcoming. But the MCPS has promised to share that information as soon as their review of the student study is complete. The other thing that has been expressed by the residents of the west side is having to look across the street at the depot. Is there any way that there could be some efforts to clean that up, beautify it to the extent it can be? And schools has responded with some efforts along those lines, and I can defer to Seth to explain in details where that's at right now. So that's a quick flyby of where we're at right now. So I'm going to ask Seth if you would provide some details from school's perspective on. I think schools is aware of the concerns of the residents and they're wanting to be responsive. So Seth, you want to flesh that out a little bit?
Sure. Thank you, David. So it's great to see everyone. Yeah, just to piggyback off of what David was saying. So there is one of our school board members has been very interested in having students participate in a lot of these complex challenges. But that doesn't mean that we're just relying on student feedback. You know, we have gone through and also reevaluated a lot of our school sites. You know, when we first started looking at parking buses on schools, that certainly was under the time frame of diesel buses. We've obviously transitioned into electrifying the fleet. We have 85 electric buses, and that's going to continue to grow. So we took a step back and started to look at parking school buses, the electric buses on school sites versus the diesel. The reason that's important is when we looked at it the first time, you know, we had to really account for that maintenance drive aisle on the front, the drive aisle on the back, just because we have front engine buses, we have rear engine buses, you know, and they're mixed matched throughout the district. So we looked at it from a variety of those perspectives. But just to give everyone a little context right now, so we have 437 buses at the Shady Grove site right now. In some of our just high level preliminary work, looking at the schools, and this is just purely looking at the schools that are served by the Shady Grove cluster. At both the high school and middle school level, it's about 120 buses that in a perfect world would fit. Obviously, that's not going through some of the engineering studies and some of those details. So there's still a variety of bus parking that is required beyond just looking at the school level. And so what we've also continued to do is look at our existing bus depots. And as many of you know, our current bus depots have both the bus, the transportation element there, but they also have our facility elements there. So our facility maintenance folks. So what we've started to look at from those facilities is, okay, if we remove the facility portion of those existing bus depots, what does that free up? What kind of space does that free up to be able to park additional buses at those spaces? Because what we do know is that finding locations for building maintenance is going to be a heck of a lot easier than trying to find locations for parking buses. So that's something that we're doing, and that does look promising in terms of numbers. Maybe not completely to that 437, but it is something that, you know, I think it's important to note that we're not just sitting back waiting, you know, for DGS to come up with a solution, even though I know David and Greg are really scouring the earth looking for, a variety of options, but we're going at this from a multi-agency perspective. So I have a feeling at the end of it, it's going to be multiple approaches, to be able to transition these buses off. But it is something I just wanted to bring to everyone's attention, that this continues to happen. And also I'd flag, I see obviously Nikosi's on here. I see Carrie Sanders is up on the call from planning. We continue to meet with planning, just around what this means for the county. So I think just that partnership between the school district, DGS, and planning, this is one of those topics that we continue to come back to and talk about in terms of what are those solutions that may exist. So it's not just the school system that's looking, it's not just DGS that's looking, it is the planning office that continues to be a participant in trying to find solutions to this. So just wanted to acknowledge Carrie, because I know she's been a big part of your work as well. In terms of the existing site as is, I know we have identified from a facility standpoint a long list of elements that we are asking and expecting our transportation folks to make improvements on. And as David has said, they have done some of them. But where we are, I guess, from a facility standpoint, is that we are ready to jump in and obviously take that work on and finish out what we're starting. So we're talking about everything from changing out the lighting out there, changing out the signage. I think there's still some fencing that needs to be addressed. I know, Sharma, we talked about plantings. That's not something that we have given up on. We've talked about just a variety of different options of what that may look like. So, we do have, as I promised before, we have one of our architects that has really dived deep into that and has provided recommendations. I can certainly share them with the group at some point. But there's still things well above and beyond even just that we intend to continue to be a part of and work with you all to make sure that we can be good neighbors while we're there, and make sure that we can dress it up and again, be part of the community from a positive neighbor perspective. So that's just my updates. I don't know if I can turn it back over to Jeffrey or if David, if I missed anything.
Yeah, let me add a couple things. One is a question to you, Seth, for the benefit of the group. Because I'm sensitive to the fact that folks hear us talk about what we're planning to do and are looking for some tangible results. When do you think you'd have some recommendations from your architect and landscape experts on ways in which we can, if not make it disappear, at least make it more visually appealing?
Well, so we do have that now, and certainly it's something that I would say is probably a good 80-90% of meeting my expectations. But just as David, you said, make it disappear. That's something we've really tried to look at. We can't, and actually we've rendered some options around different ideas around fencing, around larger fencing to try to shield different plantings, and in those renderings it creates some sightline challenges for our operations, but it also it doesn't achieve what we're trying to do either. So what we're looking at is obviously maybe not just looking at it from the curb, but going back closer to the building and trying to do some elements that are closer to the building to make it again feel like it's not trying to be hidden, but try to make it look and not try, but take care of the building, take care of the grounds, and make it fit as part of the community for now.
Okay, that's fair. Yeah, I was being facetious when I said disappear. But certainly things like fencing and landscaping, of all the fencing that exists, chain link fencing is probably the least visually appealing. So there might be some things that we can do there. I saw that Ted Willard had a statement about parking buses at schools. The logistic challenges is part of the things that we've looked at. We're not just blindly moving buses and parking them there. Certainly applauding MCPS for its aggressive efforts to transition the fleet from diesel to electric. The location of buses at schools require electric charging infrastructure as well. The study that we looked at, and again, we look forward to the school study, did involve some aspects of some structured parking and all, recognizing that many schools are active not just during the school week, but on weekends as well. So all of that has gone into the planning that has been undertaken. But it's a good point, and I appreciate you bringing it up. Greg, did you have anything to add on our property search efforts?
One thing, David, can I just chime in
Go ahead.
From the school side? So while we are looking at that about parking buses at schools, that's obviously not something that we would just do without robust community engagement, to that point that it would be disruptive. It would change both the landscape of our school sites, but also operationally, what happens, before and after school. I know everyone on this call knows, but our schools are used, from 6 in the morning all the way till 11 o'clock at night in most cases, not only for our use, but for community use. So any changes to the site operationally, visually, logistically, would involve robust community engagement and discussion. And obviously our planning folks who are very involved in, the siting and operations of our sites would be very involved in that. And so I just wanted to float that, because that's not something we would just do without having that level of community engagement. So sorry about that. Kick it back to you, Greg.
Good point, Greg.
Not too much to add. I would just note that because I'm tracking the questions in the chat, we've been at this for the better part of 15 years now. And one thing is abundantly clear to all of us is that we are not going to be able to replicate what the current MCPS facility that sits on Crabs Branch is somewhere else in its exact capacity, with parking for 450 surfaced parked buses, et cetera. So when we talk about exploring schools and school sites and using a multifaceted approach, it is in an effort to try to disperse the 450 to various locations without causing too much impact to the surrounding communities. So while we are sensitive, as Seth just pointed out, to the fact that we are sensitive to the surrounding communities on where these buses might end up and the schools that we might park them at, if we don't explore these sorts of options and give them due effort, all of the buses will continue to park right there at Crabs Branch. And so that's just the harsh reality of the situation. And so we are looking at all options, not just trying to find a 30 or 40 acre parcel somewhere in the county that we can relocate this entire operation to, because frankly, that's not going to happen. So we are looking at a multifaceted approach, and I just wanted to point that out for the good of the order and the folks that are chiming in the chat. We just want to keep all of our options open, and Seth and David have said over and over that we intend to do this it will be a multifaceted approach without fail.
Yeah, let me just peg on to that. The county transit operation also has expansion pains going on too. So we're looking at every conversation we have with DOT about ride-ons needs is always includes the MCPS needs, and always includes discussions about this particular site. I can promise you that a week doesn't go by where this is not in discussion and planning. So it's a challenge. Jeff, you asked what support can you as an organization, you as residents can provide. Clearly you have under our new council, some Councilmember Ludke and others are very interested in this. They want to hear from you, and we hear from them. And your advocacy to include this in future budgets is going to be critical. We don't yet have a budget ask of the council, but we will, and hopefully relatively soon, as in with the next couple years. But we will look for your advocacy there. We certainly, believe me, on the executive branch side, feel your advocacy on a pretty frequent basis, and kudos to Jeff as his volunteer representative of this larger group. But we really are very much aware of the need for this, and are planning it accordingly. And again, Seth can respond to Shabana's. Did I pronounce your name correctly?
Shobana.
Shobana, sorry.
That's okay. Second H is second.
I added a wrong syllable someplace.
Okay.
But and Seth can probably elaborate on this, but this, I believe, Seth, if I'm correct, this particular depot services two high school zones or districts, or in the middle part of the county. You're asking how many buses in this lot serve Durwood. I don't know that none of us have an exact number, but this represents a larger area in the mid-county, which is why we've looked at the issue of dispersing some of that. Seth mentioned you've got not only the bus parking, and we've talked about this with you folks before, but also the depot function. We've even looked at and continue to look at options of separating the parking from the depot. So we're looking at smaller parcels, dividing it up, as Greg mentioned. Those are all options that are under consideration. And it's a lot of pieces involved. There is no single large piece of ground in the county where we can put everything, but we continue to look at options for smaller parcels that can be distributed in a smaller region for linkage. We try to avoid excessive separation of parking from depot to avoid deadheading and logistical challenges along those lines. But those are all part of the issue. I see a question from Alfred Minicello. Did I get that right, Alfred? If I didn't, apologize for that. You asked a budget, stated a budget of $250,000 understood as allocated already. The answer is that's the money we're spending to pursue all these options. And do, whenever we find a site that we think is a potential site, we get a designer to test fit it, and all of that costs money, and that's where those funds are being expended. So I think, Jeff, that's a summary of where we're at. There's been some great questions in chat. I've tried to address them, but I'll turn it over to you.
Yeah, thanks a lot. This is really helpful, and again, we appreciate all of you being here this evening to be not only present together, but hearing that you're collectively working together. Because speaking from a certain vantage point, many have wondered if anything is happening. Many wonder if entity A is talking to entity B,
Sure.
and how not only the puzzle that is the problem, but the ecosystem of agencies that have time and talent to apply to resolve a problem if they're working together, paying attention, et cetera. So hearing what you're saying is very, very helpful. I have a question for Seth, and I put it in the chat because we learned from Councilmember Lutke back in February, if I remember correctly, that there were students who were involved with trying to crack this nut, so to speak. And we had understood at that point that this was an effort by students under the executive's office. And now I'm hearing that it's under MCPS. But regardless, I'm curious, Seth, can you speak, if possible, to who these students are? Are they from our own cluster? Because this was a question asked back in February. And I think given the talent of MCPS students in our cluster and beyond, I think many of us would like to know, are these students in the cluster or not? I know it's kind of besides the point, but I'm curious. I think others might be as well.
And that's actually a good question. So the student group is not under me. I mean, this is not something that they're working with me on. There, I know, one of our board members, Lynn Harris, is really assisting and working with the students. But in terms of who represents this group, I do not have that answer, but I can certainly, track that down. My understanding is that as they work through the report, it's being evaluated by a few other folks, and they're going to share it with both myself and then obviously Mr. Dice and Mr. Ossent, and then we'll take a look at it and obviously ask some questions and utilize that information for our use moving forward. So I don't have that information, but I can try to track it down.
So, Jeff, just to fill you in on what I understand, I met with board member Harris and the community or the student group several months ago, basically to give them an overview of the work that DGS had done on the project and kind of to identify what the problem was. This is what we're trying to do. This is what we're trying to solve, so forth and so on. My recollection was that there were representatives countywide in terms of the students. So they were students from all over the different high schools. And it was well in excess of 20 student members that were part of this work group. So don't remember the exact schools, but they were not just this cluster. They were from all over East County, up County, down County, et cetera. So we could probably get more detail from the board member, but and we can, Seth and I can certainly find that out.
Yeah, that'd be helpful. Look, not, and this is my own kind of observation and question, not to sound ungrateful, because I'm not, but this again was a question that came up back in February, which is, this is a sector plan of Montgomery County Planning, approved by the council, and it is both helpful to know that talented MCPS students are on the case, thanks to Lynn Harris, but at the same time, one has to wonder, with all of the resources of this county, in all of the agencies that all of you represent and beyond, why is it, maybe this is a rhetorical question, why is it that we need to engage a group of students to try to crack this nut? I don't know. I mean, I'm hard pressed. I understand why, but I think there are many in our community who are frustrated by that. And many of them may not be here this evening to hear that all of the agencies are putting their time and talent in as well. So maybe it's a matter of, and here I'm going to answer the rhetorical question, maybe the answer is throwing all available resources at the problem to see what they could do. But the way it was communicated back in February, which was very helpful to learn, left many frustrated, including me. And again, notwithstanding that, appreciate your time this evening to meet with our community. And to that end, I just want to put it out there that our community, for the record, this meeting is being recorded. And for all of you, our community has expressed nothing, persistence certainly, but nothing but a willingness to meet and talk and hear about options and be reasonable when it comes to understanding that not all of the depot can be located en masse, that it is going to have to happen piecemeal. That's a very different kind of community conversation, collaborative, communicative community conversation than the audience that DGS had with the city of Rockville when you met with them about the 7 Lock site, and they were up in arms and had T-shirts and the whole 9 yards and fought and yelled and screamed. While we have been persistent, we have been diplomatically persistent. So what I'm getting at here is thank you for taking the time this evening to dialogue with us. And I will also say, I hope it won't be another year or more before we can get another reasonable update from you all, because this type of dialogue really, really helps our community understanding about what's going on, as opposed to not meeting with us for really such a long time after multiple invitations. And we don't need to go down that road. But so thank you very much for meeting with us. I really appreciate it. I'm going to stop talking and I'm going to turn it over to Shobana Sharma. She's got her hand up. And anyone else who has questions, just please raise your hand. I'll be happy to call on you if you don't want to put your question in the chat. Thanks.
Thanks, Jeffrey. Thank you so much, everyone. I wanted to say thank you because I tonight feel like, we have a lot of great leaders here on the call. And I feel for the first time in a long time that, you all are really listening and you all are really trying to do something. So I do want to say thank you for that. I appreciate it. And Seth, I did put it in the chat, but the removal of that chain link fence and the mowing and, the weeding around that fencing, which is gone, has helped quite a bit. But I am interested in knowing, as far as the future plans, as far as the lighting, new fencing, plantings, what is our timetable? Is there any way that we could meet and, see what is planned and have an idea? You have to have a goal. You have to have a time frame. Otherwise, nothing will get done. So is there any possibility of us, being involved in that, or, and how can we do that?
Yes, absolutely. I guess, when we met a while ago, it was just a smaller group on as we did a little walking tour. I mean, we are more than happy to meet. I think that might be a better in-person type of meeting, so we can definitely arrange to come out. If we want to try to meet in a building, we can certainly line up an MCPS building somewhere to meet. I mean, but we can certainly reach out and try to coordinate that directly with you and see how we can get as many neighbors involved in that process as possible. So how about after this call, I'll shoot you my contact information, and we can try to figure out a time in the very near future to do that.
That would be wonderful. I did want to let you all know I'm the newly elected president of our first HOA for West Side.
Oh, I'm so sorry to hear that.
Oh, I hear that every time I say that. I get
Are you sure you know what you're doing?
It's been a tough month, I'll tell you that. However, it's very refreshing and it is fulfilling. And I think we can do some good things. So I'm all in. And I think meeting would be wonderful. I want us to be part of the team, part of the solution. So that's kind of where I'm coming from and where our West Side community is coming from. Second part, I guess, is for David. And maybe Greg, you mentioned sites and all of that, and you mentioned economic climate, and you mentioned prices are high and real estate market. But again, similar question, do we have a time frame? Do we have a timetable? Without having measured goals, it's going to be very easy to just stretch this out, and in a year we'll be having the same discussions. So coming from your perspective.
Sure, but it's a fair question. We are, and I get this question, believe it or not, from all kinds of folks who come to us asking for sites or places to do things or build things. And it really is market dependent. We have, in fact, had preliminary discussions with owners of parcels that are not up for sale, not even considering sale. But as you can imagine, those are delicate conversations. And so it is, from a schedule standpoint, I can promise you this is a top priority. I could even suggest that it is the top priority. But unlike other projects that are somewhat, frankly, easier to construct because they only require 5 acres or 7 acres or things like that, this is daunting just because of the scale of the project. So we are constantly, Greg can tell you, we have consultants, because oftentimes we go out into the market represented by others, so that the owners don't necessarily know it's the county, and the price doesn't automatically go up by 50%. But we are constantly, Greg has a whole team of real estate folks and development folks that are constantly on the prowl for parcels to address this specific issue. So it is market dependent. It's also this particular project, despite the larger concept that Seth and Jeffrey were just talking about, this particular concept is challenged because it's got to fall within a limited area in order to service the school districts that they do. So but with that in mind, we're constantly on the prowl. I hesitate to offer a time frame, but we are. It is compelling us. I'd like to think that we're generally pretty creative. We've done some creative things elsewhere, but it is compelling us to look at even more creative options to comply with the plan, and we're doing that. And we're having those conversations. We'll be briefing the county executive. The meeting's not scheduled yet, but we've asked to get on his calendar to talk about some options just along those lines. So it's it's never not there, but I can't really give you a schedule that I don't want to set myself up or you to be disappointed.
Yeah, I understand that and I appreciate that. I mean, you can't give us what you don't have. So I understand. And I think our community does understand, but patience is going out the wind now. Some
Well,
people.
no, I completely appreciate that. And to your point, and to a point that Jeff made just a few minutes ago, the phrase came to me that the phrase that nature abhors a vacuum and uninformed citizens abhor silence. So we want to be more communicative, and certainly not a year past before we update you on where we're at. So we will endeavor to be in contact with you more.
Okay. Just two short things. You mentioned a park on Columbus and Gramercy in conjunction with EYA. Is that across from the Starbucks or the temporary park that is where the next multifamily building is?
The latter. So we're gonna do the grand opening of the Laureate tomorrow. And then there is the final kind of quadrant parcel towards the back there. So where Gramercy hits Columbus, that edge right there, EYA has developed a very nice, attractive kind of pocket park area, which hopefully they've shared with you, because we're about to say yes and allow them. The county still technically owns that property. We haven't sold it to them yet. But we are going to work with them to allow that to move forward and create a nice open space until that final quadrant, that area is developed.
So just to share the good news with you, it was done in a day. It's done. That park they laid the sod, I think like a day or two ago. They've put some chairs out. They've got a little, I mean, it's not all done, but a lot of it, they shared the drawing, sent that to us. And a lot of it is done. It does look nice.
Well, I'm glad it looks nice because, and thankfully, none of the county attorneys are on this call, so that's good. But we
didn't say yes yet.
We will. We'll expedite the paperwork and make sure that it gets done. But yeah, no, we just reviewed it this week. But in any event, glad to hear it's moving forward. It's not really a big issue. I'm kidding, obviously, but we were happy to oblige that request, knowing that having a big pile of dirt sitting there as opposed to a nice park or a sitting area was not a question. So we were able to come to a quick decision on that one.
Yeah, but they said it's temporary just for the summer. So I don't know. It's
we'll see.
So, that is very important. And then my last question is the parcel of land that the county still owns adjacent to Shady Grove and Crabs Branch. It's the last parcel, which is supposed to be retail. We understand that the county still owns it. And there's no decision on what's going to go there. Retail is a problem because there's traffic only on one side of Crabs Branch. There's no turnoff. So they're having difficulty getting retail there. As a community, we do not want more homes there. We are tapped out. We have no green space. We are walking on top of each other. So I can say with 100% clarity that, we are definitely going to advocate for green space over there. So, park, whatever. I don't know, park, something. So that was it. I appreciate your time and I appreciate your efforts, and thank you all very much.
Thanks, Shobana. A couple of folks have put questions in the chat. I want to make sure to get them. Ted Willard, excuse me. You wrote, I assume the answer to my question will be all options are on the table, but is there consideration of building a two-story structure like the depot for county buses at the corner of the branch?
Yeah, let me answer that very simply. Yep. The answer is absolutely. We need to, I mean, for years, the county's had the luxury of spreading out. That luxury is long past. Yes, absolutely. There's certainly the service bays that have to be ground level, but nothing else has to be.
Thank you.
So we will compel that just for efficiency sake. It's cheaper and it's smarter.
And just Jeff, just to expand on that, and this is something that Seth and I have discussed in the past. He mentioned all of the capacity issues at the other depots, not just at Crabs Branch, but at others. They're exploring those same types of opportunities at the other depots. And so if they need to go to structured parking to create pressure relief valves for their infrastructure and their other facilities and so forth, that's something that they're exploring as well. So yes, all of that is on the table, and not just at Crabs Branch, or not just to solve Crabs Branch, I should say.
Yeah, no, understood. Thank you. Appreciate that. I want to make sure we didn't miss any other questions here. We talked about the students. Alfred, if these students aren't integrated into the several agencies, given the degree of complexity and coordination that is increasingly needed, as you all have indicated today, it feels like they've been tasked with handicaps from the very start of their project. Forgive me, but pointing some responsibility or leadership now to the Board of Education leader who leads the student project, that feels too remote and unconnected to be credible that real progress is forthcoming. Why does that appear to be, yet again, pointing fingers elsewhere? We pay the taxes for MCPS for all branches of Montgomery County government, but I feel that there is continuing in the future fractured research that hinders coordinating multivariable solutions. Well stated, Alfred. Lastly, I apologize if I sound frustrated. No, you don't. But I believe I'm not alone in the long-term frustration. Well stated, Alfred. Kudos to you. Any thoughts on that from anybody?
So again, as it relates to the student work group, as I think Seth mentioned, it's not something that falls under him, and it's certainly not something that falls under the Department of General Services. This was a grassroots effort, from what I understand, the students and board member Lynn Harris, that we accommodated a request to hear more about the dilemma that we've had over the years. I can assure you, and I think I can assure you on behalf of Seth and others, that we are not relying on a student work group to solve this issue for the county or for MCPS. That is not the intent here, and we don't want to leave anyone with that impression. The capital budget has resources in it, as David has mentioned, to forward all of these efforts at a Department of General Services and county level, using architects, engineers, and other professional staff to solve this issue. And again, just not to beat a dead horse, but we don't want to leave you with the impression that we are throwing our hands in the air and relying on a student group to solve this problem for us. That is not the case.
Yeah, you have, and Greg's absolutely right. I just want to add this, as was mentioned before, y'all are glad to see us working collaboratively with MCPS, but it's everyone's problem, not just the county's, not just yours, but MCPS's. And they asked for expressed the desire to approach this in order to gain buy-in from the school board or the Board of Education and others. We felt like this was worth doing. I'm looking forward to the report. I would be surprised if and I don't mean to sound demeaning in this, but even a student study group will come to the similar conclusions that we have, which I think, should that occur, will probably be even more persuading.
Yeah, Understood. Thank you both very much. Certainly understood. I did want to go back a moment. Alfred, thank you again for your thoughts and your question, certainly. David, do you anticipate perhaps mid-year needing more funding from the council that the community would need to get behind to make sure that that's available?
The funds that we received are sufficient for the ongoing studies. Let me put it this way: should we find an opportunity that presents itself, we will certainly go to the council whenever we need to and request a special appropriation along those lines. So I won't even promise mid-year. I'd say at any point, if an opportunity presents itself, we will make that known to certainly the executive first, and then should he support that, then to the council. Underscoring my earlier comments that we're constantly working on this. So if an opportunity presented itself tomorrow, where we had a willing seller and we could come to a reasonable agreement on cost, then we would immediately make it known. And my commitment to you would be to make it known to you so that you could advocate along with us.
Thank you. Thank you very much, David. And this, I think, ties into Ted Willard's comment here about the $250,000 that was recently passed by the council it might be budgeted to do this work. And Ted's assuming that that would only fund the planning work around relocation, that the actual purchase and other costs of relocation would be much.
Absolutely. This is just paying for my team to do what they need to do to keep the project going.
Yeah, the CIP ask, as David mentioned, whenever that happens, when we walk through the door, it will be a very big ask. It will be enormous, and we'll push other things in the CIP out of the way in order to accommodate them. So there will be plenty of notice and request for advocacy and so forth.
Yeah, that again, Greg, as he often does, brings up an astute point that, and I want to underscore this because I know Councilmember Ludke and other council members would say the same thing. We just came through a budget process, both operating and capital budget process, and it's firmly packed and very compressed. There's no money left for anything. So what that means, it doesn't mean that we can't do anything. It means that whatever we do needs to push other things aside. And every year we just, as I said, just finished a process of reshuffling the priority deck on other projects in order to do other projects that came up more urgently. As a mild example, we have to replace chillers that are critical to the operation of the executive office building, the court buildings, and the 4th District Police Station to the tune of $7 million. That was something that had to be done, so we pushed some other things around to make way for that right now. Similar approach would be with this. If an opportunity presents, we'll sit down with the Office of Management Budget, sit down with the executive, sit down with the county council, and figure out what other shuffling can occur to make something like this happen.
And thank you, David. And I assume too that the sale of the east side property that amount would be applied to the new.
That's always a factor in the consideration. Yes, that initial outlay versus repayment on the backside. Yes. But it still requires that initial outlay.
Yeah, there's got to be the upfront acquisition, and construction thereafter needs to be done and funded years in advance of whatever becomes of the east side and whatever revenues are generated as a result of its redevelopment. So there is a wide multi-year gap in between the two, and that's something that our budget office needs to manage.
Yeah, there's the concept of offset, but it's not an immediate offset.
Right.
Understood. Okay. Shobana has a question about, is there a revised timeline for electrification of the MCPS bus fleet? How long is that timeline?
Seth?
Yeah, I'll certainly be able to distribute that. I know currently we're now working over at our West Farm facility. So the goal was to start adding electric vehicles at each one of the bus depot facilities. The last one we're hitting is we're still running. It actually is much more difficult to run this electric power. I mean, Pepco is running into challenges. They want easements going over top of current forest conservation easements. It's becoming much more challenging to get the infrastructure in place than I think in some locations than we initially thought. So I will get the most up-to-date timeline for that implementation, but just want to let everyone know that we are now over at the West Farm facility, getting ready to install charging stations there. And then we'll obviously continue to fall back and roll out more at the other facilities that already have them.
Thank you. That's very helpful. We're at 8:25, almost an hour into our meeting, and I generally try to conclude our meetings no later than an hour and a quarter. We've gone to 9 o'clock, but let's not do that this evening unless we need to. Does anyone else have any questions in respect of everyone's time? Please raise your hand or just put it in the chat. And if not, I want to thank David and Greg and Seth for their presentation this evening and for being so very thoughtful and coming to our virtual table to share their thoughts and their progress. Thank you, gentlemen, very, very much.
Yeah, let me just offer, if someone after this goes, had a head slap moment about a question, just pass them on and we'll answer them.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Will do. I want to turn things over to Nkosi Yearwood on any development updates pertaining to the Shady Grove sector plan, Nkosi, that you might have to share.
Yeah,
Thank
sure. So I don't have anything new, but I have something that's on the radar, and I shared with the group, I think was about a month ago, or maybe 3 weeks ago, property that's for sale in the Crabs Branch Office Park. And if you could see my screen, I'm from Google Maps here. So we met with these folks yesterday. And they will be coming in sometime to do a rezoning of 2 properties. This one here, which is at the intersection of Monona Drive and Crabs Branch Way. And then they also have on their ownership this property here with a Keller Williams and a Blue Halo. So these properties are within the industrial zone, the IM zone. They're looking to do some amount of residential on it. But the sort of first step is probably going to be a concept plan, which will permit them to get sort of free advice from the permitting agencies. And then they'll probably come back with a rezoning application or local map amendment to go from industrial to some other zone. Those zones will be something that we'll have a conversation on. So much of this area, when we did the sector plan in 2021, had one property owner prior to that. It was a real estate investment trust. Prior to the pandemic, that trust from California, they sold it to another entity, and that entity, Donatelli, they're looking to sell off some of these parcels. So we alerted them regarding, in terms of public engagement with this committee, as well as that of residential associations in the area, given the experience from the American Society of Plant Biologists, to make sure early in the process that they get community feedback. So we anticipate to have probably some future conversations with them down the road, and when they're ready to sort of move forward, we'll sort of set up an opportunity for them to come to this group to provide a briefing on their plans. So that's the sort of the only thing I'm aware of that's happening Shady Grove Station west side or east side within the plan area.
Thanks, Nkosi. Any questions for Nkosi?
Nkosi, hi there. Thanks so
Hey.
much for that update. Any new changes on that parcel, Crabs Branch and Shady Grove?
Nothing,
Anything?
nothing. We haven't met with the EYA or the county or anyone else on that for a very long time. Yeah, whenever we get something new, we will let you know. But we have nothing to share.
Okay, that's fair. Thank you so much.
Mm-hmm.
There is a question in the chat from Ted Willard. Is there a sense of how many dwelling units they would want to have pertaining to what you discussed, Nkosi?
It's yeah, there were units in the initial concept, but I think I'll wait until they come back in. They showed us primarily townhouses and 2-over-2s. It wasn't yeah, they were primarily townhouses and 2-over-2s. So I think one site had probably about 100, the other site had a bit more, but there weren't a significant amount of units. But yeah, we'll see what comes back in. If some of the conversation points we had with them in terms of, rather than one set of unit types, maybe seeking some alternatives in terms of multifamily, maybe senior housing, some other things besides variety of width townhouses, either 16 or 18 feet in width. But yeah, so we'll see what the development team comes back with as they move down the road.
Thank you. Any other questions for Nkosi? Feel free to raise your hand. I'm not raising my hand. Okay. Nkosi, thank you again. Oh, Marianne Shivern. Marianne, please go ahead. Nice to see you.
Hi. I have a question, and this may not be related to this meeting, but on Redland Road, near the bridge over the railroad track, there is a big kind of apartment building. People stop in front of that all the time, and it's very hazardous coming over the bridge on Redland Road from 355 going more into Durwood. Is there anything that can be done? Put no parking or no stopping signs, because it's everything from trucks to Uber to taxis and things like that.
You mean the bridge over the Metro Rail line?
Yeah, yes, I'm sorry. The bridge over the Metro Rail, when you come from 355 and come over that bridge, a lot of times there's traffic stopped right over the crest of the bridge in front of that apartment building on the side that's next to the railroad tracks.
Yeah. That would fit squarely under the other topics part of our agenda this evening.
Okay.
So your question is spot on. I don't know if we can really unpack that substantially at this meeting, but Nkosi, would that be a question for Department of Transportation, MCDOT?
Correct. That's really will fall within Department of Transportation realm regarding what additional traffic changes or modifications they could make there.
Yeah, Marianne, happy, Aaron Crowd from Councilmember Luby's office. Happy to try to facilitate getting that to the right person in DOT. Left my email in the chat, so shoot me an email and we'll try to figure it out.
Okay, you'll regret asking me to give you input, but that's okay.
That's what I'm here for.
I'm an engineer and I can't help it. Everything I see drives me nuts about Durwood and Redland and Shady Grove and everything else. So no, I will contact you about that because it is dangerous. It's just a matter of time. People get out of both sides of the cars and they're basically in the roadway and no one can see coming over the bridge. So.
Thank you, Marianne. Noted. Thank you, Aaron, very much.
Aaron, you might want to check. That could be a state road too.
Will do. Yeah.
Other topics anyone wishes to raise within the sector from your perspectives? Marianne, did you have something else you wanted to share? I see your hand.
Oh, I'm sorry. No, I didn't lower it.
No problem. Okay, anyone else? Any topics they wish to bring up? Okay, if not, gentlemen, thank you again very much. And thanks to everybody for your time and your participation this evening. This committee is only as effective as feedback and participation enables. So thank you all very much. Really have a very good summer. I'm going to put our next meetings in the chat, as well as some thanks to everybody, all our key VIP guests this evening. And my email's in there too, if anyone wishes to be in touch. So we will reconvene in August 2nd, 7:30 via Teams. And thank you all again very, very much.
Thank
Have
you.
a good
Take
summer.
care.
Safe and healthy.
Take care.
Thank you.
Thanks a
Thank
lot,
you.
Jeff. Thanks.
Thank you. Bye-bye.